Hi guys. Alright, do you want to just grab a seat? Okay, so today we've got Kim Hawes in to talk to you about her experiences being a tour manager for the band Motorhead. She's got some great tales and really inspirational, so feel free afterwards to have a Q&A. So start thinking about some questions that you can ask, and I'll hand you over to Kim.
Do that, it's fine. Hello, like I said, my name is Kim Hawes. Now, I don't want to just sit up here and talk to you. I want some back and forth communication, because it's no good me being up here and talking about things. And if you think, oh, I'd love to ask that, and don't get to do it, it's on your head, you've missed it. So don't miss that opportunity. I'm going to start off by saying there's an awful lot of people that still say today there are not that many women in the music industry. Why not? You know, I did it in 1979. I was 19 and I got to get on tour. Now, like, I didn't start as a tour manager, and I don't think anybody should. If you do, you're really lucky, because you need to learn the tricks of the trade first. You need to learn what's going on. And sometimes you can miss that completely. I started my journey selling t-shirts, and I just had to be in the right place at the right time. So your next question, I know, is about how do you get into that, right? Well, first of all, I'd like a show of hands here. How many of you actually play a musical instrument? Okay. How many of you are singers? Okay. How many of you can't play a musical instrument, can't sing, and are totally musically tone deaf? Excellent. So am I. So am I. So now you're going to think, how on earth then did you get into the music industry if you can't do any of those things? And like I said, it's been in the right place at the right time. And that's how you do it. So I always say to people, look, if there's a gig near where you live and they've got like a bar, go work behind the bar. Go volunteer to clean up. Go volunteer to go out and do running for whoever's there to get all the stuff in the dress. Go volunteer and do it, because you never know what can happen. And I'm going to give you a quick example of that. I was in America, and our drummer went AWOL. He used to do it quite often. Drummers do. Drummers are known to be the worst people in the band. Right, I've got some people there going, oh no, that's me. Right, okay. Well, I don't know why, but it's just a stigma that they have. And so, yeah, he went missing. But a lot of the times I could find him. What would you do without your mobile phone now? Think about that one. What exactly would you do? So I had to find this guy. No idea where he was. The only thing I do know is that he had 10 guests that night on the guest list. So I made my way to the front, and I watched people come in. And if they asked for the guest list and they were under Harry Rishkoff, which was his name, then I knew I could ask them where he might be. And I used to usually find him that way. But this night, I had no chance. And it was 10 minutes before the band were about to go on stage, and we had no drummer. And there's only so many times you can delay a show. You can have your roadies walking on off the stage, pretending that they're messing with a microphone, or they can keep going up to, and you know that usual thing where they go, 1, 2, check, 1, 2? So boring. So boring. Think of something more unique. You know, we had a guy that used to tell us what he'd had for breakfast that morning. That's far more interesting than check 1, 2. Anyhow, so basically there's only so long you can do that for. So I was talking to the promoter, and he said to me, he said, you think you could do with a drink? And I never drank on tour. That's one thing, because we'll go into that later. But this night I did, and he was saying, like, what can we do? And he said, oh, it's a shame we didn't know earlier. The guy that does the coffee in the daytime in the cafe next door, is an absolute fan of this band. He knows every single song that they've ever done, and he plays drums. And he's actually come tonight to watch them. And as it was, he walked in then and he went, "This is him," introduced me to him. We took that guy on tour. And he played drums for the rest of the tour because they'd had enough of the original drummer. So they sacked him off and they took this guy. This guy was one day serving coffee. The next day, he was on tour with a multi-million-pound band playing drums. He's now a session musician in Los Angeles and has earned a fortune. So look how far you can go. But if you're not there and you're not within that mix of people, you're going to miss so many opportunities. The way I got my first gig, you guys can't do it. And that's not being nasty. It's because I lied completely. I told a big fat porky. Elvis Costello and the Attractions were the people I was really into punk. And my best friend and I, she was going to marry Elvis Costello. I was going to marry the guy from the keyboards. Fairy tales, dreams, those things don't happen. But I wanted to meet them. And I was lucky enough to have seen them on TV 2 months before. And basically, I was in America on a school exchange trip, and they happened to be on Saturday Night Live. Now, again, in those days, there was no internet, there was no nothing. Nobody knew what Saturday Night Live in America was. So I thought, I'm going to use this. My friend and I did get drunk before we went to the gig. And we kind of staggered in, and I went straight up to the stage, and I said, I was with Elvis Costello while they were filming for Saturday Night Live in New York. And this guy was like, really? I don't remember. Oh, yeah, I was there. And I told them all about the performance. Well, of course, nobody had seen it in Preston. And people were just like, this guy, oh, you've got to come back. After the show, come back. So I had some more drinks in Preston Guildhall. And after the show, I went up to the stage, and he took me. He said, come on, they're dying to see you again. And I was like, oh, crap. I have no idea. They're just going to look at me and wonder who that... But that didn't matter. Steve Nivey is going to look at me and go, this is it. And he's going to say, come with me and marry me. Well, of course that didn't happen. So we go backstage, and then the guy went, oh, they've already left. But they were in the hotel opposite. So I thought, I've got 10 minutes, 20 minutes at max before I need to be at the bus station. So I was like, yeah, and you know, who's going to... You're young, you don't think about the fact that if I miss that last bus home, I'm snookered. So basically, we went to the hotel, and it was so exciting, and we went up the stairs to the bar, and they're all sat around this big round table, and he pulls me a chair up, and I sat down, and I was like a rabbit in headlights. There was my idol. There was the guy I was going to marry. This is amazing. Until he kind of realized that I didn't know them at all. And they didn't know me. So he went, I think you better leave. And escorted me out the bar. Now, times are different. And people are going to say that of all generations. And this is going to sound quite dark. But there was a time when women got tour passes for one reason and one reason only. And it's not a nice, pleasant thing to be. And there were even names for those passes and things that they just thought, you know, this woman's only here for one reason. And this guy was the tour manager, and he said, do you want to come on tour? And I was like, well, I've got to catch my bus home first because I need some stuff, and I'll have to ask my mum. So I did, and I went home and I said, Mum, can I go on tour with Elvis Costello and the Attractions? And she went, no. You know, absolutely not. But then she kind of realized that if she said no, I'd go anyway. You know, she wasn't going to stop me. She'd just get up the next day and the bedroom window would be wide open and I'd be gone. So she said there's one condition. You go for the last 5 days, the last week. I know every place that you're going to, and I know every hotel you're staying in. Well, that wasn't hard. I got all that because he was calling me the next day, got everything, and basically she gave me the money that made me allowed me to stay in the hotels they were in. Now, I met this guy in the lobby at night after they'd done the gig, and they had a second gig the next day. And we got in and he said, come on then, let's go to bed. We've got to get up early in the morning. Got in the lift. He pressed one button. I pressed another. He was so gobsmacked, and the doors opened, and I got out, and I went, good night. And he was like, where are you going? I was like, I'm going to bed. I'll see you in the morning. And walked off. He had no idea where I was, but I was safe. Now, the next morning, of course, I'm now Billy No Mates. I know nobody in the band. I know nobody in the crew or anybody. And he doesn't speak to me. So I made my way down to the venue. And I sat in the corner of this venue all day. And I thought, what is the attraction of this? This is cold, it's damp, I'm starving, there's nothing to do, and I'm bored out my mind. How can anybody do a job like this? This is awful. Then it got to like 5 o'clock that evening, and there was a commotion. Where's the merchandising? There's no merchandising, there's nothing. Well, where's Lorraine? She's in hospital. Now, Lorraine was the girl that was selling the T-shirts, and she ended up in hospital that day because years ago we used to sell little badges with pins on the back, and she got stabbed by one of them when she was counting them out, and basically she got blood poisoning from it. So she was in hospital, and there was nobody to sell T-shirts. Hello? That's when I came in, and I started selling T-shirts. Did it till the end of the tour. Went home thinking that was amazing, had a great time. And what am I going to do now? All I know, I'll go back to what I was going to do. I'll become a swimming instructor. But I got a phone call, and it said, I believe you were selling merchandising for Elvis Costello. Yeah, that's right. Do you want a job? Okay. Why, what's it doing? We want to send you to Europe. Now, I didn't come from a very rich family. I lived with my grandparents and my mother. So my mum was a single parent. So any excuses like that, I don't want to hear it if it's what you want to do. Because whatever you want to do, and if you want to keep doing it, you've got the strength behind you to keep going. Nothing's going to stop you. And so basically, like I said, Europe. Whereabouts in Europe? Oh, Italy, Germany, France, Spain. And I'm like, really? I was like, yeah, you're going to go there and you're going to get paid not that much money in those days, £15 a day, I think it was. But then on top of that, you get all your food, everything else. You even get like per diem, which is like just a basic, where you've got some money to spend during the daytime. And yeah, and it'll all be paid for. So that's where I went. Now, I was so scared. Absolutely petrified this time because this was different. I'm going to be working for somebody, and I've got to show that I can do it. And I thought, it's okay. I know. I'll get on the train. And my friends were putting me on the train, so that was even worse. So I thought, well, I can't do a runner from Preston Station. The train gets it coming into London, and I thought, okay, I'll just get off the train. There'll be another train back to Preston, and I'll just do that. And nobody needs to know that I didn't go, and I'm too frightened to do this. But coming into London, it's really funny, actually. Does anybody watch that O'Maze? You know those O'Maze houses? You seen those on the TV? Yeah. Well, there was one, and I recognized it so quickly. In fact, I really wanted that house. Because it was Courage, which was a beer company. And it was their logo, and it was on the side of their brewery, and they turned it into this Amaze house. And it actually says on the side, take courage. You can't see it anymore on the train into Euston. Can't see it. But years ago you could, and it stood out like a sore thumb. And I was, like I say, so scared about what I was about to do. And then I looked at that sign, and I just thought, what if I don't do it? What happens if I don't go out on tour to these amazing places that I've never got the opportunity to go to or thought I ever would? And with these amazing people, and best of all, I've got a backstage pass. And that backstage pass says access all areas, and nobody can stop me. And how fun is that at such a young age, being able to like swan around in these huge venues and go, I'm with the band. It was amazing. It was such a thrill. But like I said, that take courage set in my head, and I'm like, what is the worst that can happen? Now, what I've learned is the worst that can happen is nothing. And nothing is the worst thing that can happen. Because if you do nothing about it, then nothing will happen and nothing will change. And that has always stuck in my head through everything I've done. Now, how many of you like heavy metal? Okay, I hate it. I hate heavy metal. So my job interview when I came back from the Rush tour was, right, we've got 2 tours going out, and one is with The Damned, and one's with this new band called Motorhead. I was like, oh, God, no, I don't want Motorhead. My first experience of meeting Lemmy from Motorhead was walking into the office, always nervous. You know, this was London. I was a northern girl, and I'm going to London. I'd never been to London before, you know, and I'm sat in these offices, and I could see, you know, when everybody's watching you, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm really nervous, and these people are so confident. And there was this 2 women that were doing, like, answering the phone and welcoming people in. And there was one lady, she was called Motorcycle Irene. I swear to God, she had the smallest skirt on I've ever seen in my life. It was it was a belt, basically. And she had jet black hair, black eye makeup. And she was talking to this guy with really long hair. I had no idea who it was. And there was a straitjacket on her desk. So basically, Lemmy just went to me, went, "Oi, you." I was like, "Me?" He was like, "Yeah, you, come here." So I stood up and I walked towards him, and he went, "Just try this on." So he gets me, I'm in this straitjacket, and then he ties it up at the back. And he walked out and he went, "Now get out of that one," and left. And I have got about to meet the guy that is running this management company in a straitjacket. And I was like bright red and just, no. Then this guy phoned down to reception. He said, you can send Kim up now. And Irene just turned around to him and went, "Oh, it might take her a while. She's kind of tied up." You know, and because that's what I was, exactly. So that was my first experience of Lemmy. Now, once I got out the straitjacket and made it up to the first floor, I sat behind this desk. I've never seen so many papers and stuff on this desk. Contracts of all these different bands, places where they were going to go, all kinds of stuff. And the amount of swearing was unbelievable. Like, just down the phone, there was like all these phones going off, and it was, tell them to F off, tell them to do this. Well, stupid, you can imagine. And I'm like, oh my, I'm not used to this. This is just so out of my comfort zone. Anyhow, first question, he just said, right, you were good at your job on the last one, so I'm going to ask you a question. What kind of music do you like? So I said, punk. I want The Damned. I want to go on tour with The Damned. He went, okay. Motorhead Overkill tour. And that was it. No, nothing else. And I couldn't even stand there and go, but I don't like heavy metal. And that was a good thing, because if you're working with a band, the worst thing you can do is not the worst thing, obviously, but it's not good to really be into a band for them to be your idol. And Doug Smith knew this, because I wouldn't have got any work done. Imagine if I'd have been on tour, like with Elvis. I was too busy watching the show. I was too busy seeing where Stephen Ive was behind his keyboards. I was following them around like a lost puppy. But Motorhead, no way, did nothing for me whatsoever. And that was my saving grace, because I actually did the work I was supposed to. First night on a tour bus with Motorhead was, talk about not going to sleep. I didn't even know I had a bunk on the tour bus. And again, Lemmy just said to me, when it's like, what kind of movies are you into? As if I had a choice. I'm going to put, again, it was an old movie, Excalibur on. on the videos. I mean, these tour buses are amazing, absolutely incredible. Some of them are really dodgy, but some of them are magnificent. Motorhead never really got the magnificent ones because they'd already been banned from every hotel in Europe. Now think about that one. From up in Scotland to the far reaches of, what was Yugoslavia, etc., all the way down, everywhere. They were banned from hotels, which I could never understood, really, because if anybody ever wanted to make any money, it was to leave the bar open all night for them, because the amount of money that they spent in there was crazy. I was telling one of your lectures earlier, my first journey I had on this tour bus, and we were on a ferry, and basically the tour manager went to duty free, and he just like, what do you drink? And I was expecting him to come back with a cup full of, I was just like, I drink Remy brandy. So it was like, okay. He didn't. He came back with a bottle. Everybody had a bottle and a straw, and that was it. Nobody had a glass. Nobody had anything in it. They just had a bottle and a straw. And that was how crazy it was. It was nuts. We did things. I'll give you another story. We were in Sweden, which is dangerous in summer. But again, the managers used to send us off to the most obscure places with Motorhead. And the reason for that was he didn't want them in London. He didn't want them around. Put them on tour, get them out the place, and get them working. That's great. And Lemmy loved doing that. Lemmy just loved playing live. So we did this tour of 6 weeks in Sweden. Now, any of you that know Sweden, it's not that big. It's not really got that many cities. But we did every town, like even if they were 5 miles apart, we did it. And it's even worse when it doesn't go dark, because you get your mindset's weird. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and the sun's shining through your window, which is really messes with your head completely. We had this overnighter this night. We were, like I say, we had a field to cross. So we decided we'd start off early on this trip. And Wurzel, who was a guitar player in Motorhead, decided he needed the loo. Well, if anybody knows about tour buses, there's certain rules that you can't do. We're in the middle of nowhere. So he said, it's okay, just pull over and I'll go into the woods. So he went into the woods, and then all of a sudden, he's running down the highway back to the tour bus. There's a bear behind him. There's a bear chasing him through the woods, and he manages to get back to the tour bus. And it was like, what did you do? He said, well, there was 2 little cute bear things, and I just went up to them. And then this big bear came after me. So we made the escape, and we went further down the road. Then we pulled in again, and there was a lake there. Now, lakes are not good with a band that are like that, especially when there's a rowing boat at the side of the lake. And the filthy animal Taylor, who was the drummer, decided he'd take the rowing boat out. The trouble was he only got it off the jetty, then it started to sink. And the boat went further and further down and ended up at the bottom of this lake. Now, this lake obviously belonged to this farmhouse. Now, imagine if you were asleep in bed and all of a sudden you heard your tractor going off, and a load of long-haired guys were in your garden doing your garden because they felt so guilty about the boat that they decided to mow the guy's lawn with his tractor. Now, they've got this tractor going up and down. And imagine 4 a.m. in the morning, you're woken up by your own tractor in your garden in the middle of nowhere. So this poor guy stood by his window, and his eyes, you could see his just expression. It was just like, what the hell, am I dreaming? And he walked away. He didn't come out and confront them. So basically, they're mowing the grass, and all of us were out there with rakes and whatever we could find to pick the grass up and put it on his compost heap. Now, this sounds really not rock and roll whatsoever until you get to the next bit, because then the bus driver has been bitten by mosquitoes. His ankles have swollen up so big that he can't press the pedals on the tour bus. We've still got 5 miles to go before we get to the ferry. I know, we'll use some brushes. Brushes with long handles. Somebody sat down the well by the door. Another person sat on this side, and we're doing, all we said was like, right, tell us when to brake, tell us when to accelerate. And we're pressing the pedals with the brushes. We finally get to the ferry. And bye, Mr. Ferry, we'd missed it. So what do you do then? What would you do? You know, like, anybody that's thinking of doing on the production side, any ideas what you would do if you were stuck like that and the next ferry was at 6 p.m. that night and that was too late? What would you do? Got any ideas? Yeah, you could, but it was too far for that. Anything else? You hire a boat. Yeah? Hire a boat. Only this was Motorhead, so it wasn't any boat. They didn't want to hire just any boat. They had a speedboat. Because a speedboat was so much more fun than your average bog standard boat. The equipment had already gone. The equipment was already there, so it was just the band that had to get there. So we hired the speedboat. The speedboat's quite boring, actually, unless you get some speakers to put on the top of it. Where are you going to get? We'll hire some speakers. So then we've got all the time in the world to get across this ferry because we don't have to be there till the afternoon. So now we've got speakers that have been hired on top of the speedboat. We're not playing what you would think would have been something, you know, that Motorhead would play. We were playing Frankie Goes to Hollywood. So we've got two tribes going at full blast, and we're going across this field. Now, going in a straight line is boring too. So we're playing with this speedboat, and we're all taking it in turns on how to steer it, etc. Because they drive it, but you don't really drive a speedboat. Anyhow, in the distance, we can see this submarine coming up. Now, it's just like, and on top of this submarine is something that you wouldn't expect because it was a Russian submarine. Now, this Russian submarine was obviously on maneuvers that nobody wanted to know about, but they could probably hear the music, wondered what the hell was going on from the middle of this fjord, and they came up, and they were all up on the top watching us because I don't know what we were doing. Anyway, we finally get across to the other side. So that was just one event. Now, I don't know if any of you are religious, but from that night onwards, I used to pray every day because I never knew what was going to happen. You never knew what the day, you get up in the morning, you know when you get up in the morning, you're really tired and you're thinking to yourself, I'm so tired, I don't want to do this. If you're on tour, there are two rules that you can't break at all. Is one, get up when you're supposed to. Can't roll over and go back to sleep. And two is lateness. You know, if you are late, it puts everything out of sync. You could put, you know, like things that you wouldn't even think of. Towns have curfews where you have to shut up by that time. People come to venues that are on buses or trains, and the trains stop at a certain time. So you can't have your headliner on stage playing and then suddenly everybody's gone because the last train's gone. So being late and being tardy is absolutely the worst. You've got 6 hours to get to the next town. It usually takes 8, but you've only got 6 because you logistically can't do it in any, you know, you haven't got the 8 hours to do it in. So if you're late and they've still got to make up 2 hours, you're putting everything in jeopardy, everything. And you know that old saying, the show must go on? That's the full most important thing ever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter about if you get to like the big bands where you've got millions of pounds to spend. You have that opportunity to do whatever it takes. In my career, I've hired a Learjet which was amazing fun. It was working with EMI. Now, after I was tour managing up until, I don't know, 1995, which is a couple of things I'll bring into this, is people say that women can't have children while they're on tour. You can, if you've got the money. Once you've got the money to have children, if you're on the stage, then you can always take them with you. That is no problem, because you can hire your nanny, your teacher, whatever you want to go with you. So you have those people with you. But what happens if you're part of the working crew? You can't do that. And so that's when I quit. I went out for a 2-week tour, hated every second of being away from my daughter, hated it. Cried myself to sleep every night, so came home and I quit. Lucky for me became my next job, where as actually no men had done it before, it was just women. I was the very first person to become what is now known as a crisis manager. Now, a crisis manager is great fun. But unfortunately, that is one job that you cannot do unless you've got loads of experience of touring behind you. Because you're sent to places, it's when bands or something's not right on a tour. So you're employed by either a record company or a management company or somebody because something's going wrong and you want to know what's going wrong and how to fix it. But if you've worked for Motorhead for 10 years, you get to know all those little instincts, like infighting between each other. What is wrong with everybody? Why are they not getting on anymore? It's guaranteed that 3 weeks on tour and your third week you'll fall out with everybody. But by the fourth week you're okay again. It's like families. You're family and you do that, But sometimes it can be through drugs, alcohol, hating each other just because they, treated your guitar with disrespect, did something with it that you didn't like, or they ate their breakfast noisily in your face. Anything that can just trigger. So what I used to do is go in, find out what was wrong with them, and then put it right so they could carry on. A good example of this was a guy that was from Ireland. He was a postman. Again, you've got to be out there. It goes back to my first point. If you're not out there, nobody's going to know you're there. And he was out with his wife on a Sunday night in a bar, and they were doing some karaoke for a laugh. And he stood up and he did an Elvis Presley impersonation of a different song. He just started singing it in an Elvis Presley voice. There just happened to be 2 guys in there from EMI that they were drunk too. Most good ideas come from people, you probably know yourselves, that your best ideas come from when you're kind of out of it slightly, or you're high on life, if not anything else. But anyhow, they were in there and they just went, "This is such a great idea. Why don't we put an album together full of other songs that Elvis Presley never sang, and let's get somebody to sing them in an Elvis Presley voice? Great idea. Let's get him." So they did. They took this postman and they gave him a record deal there and then. And basically he was on this record, and the record was called Gravelands. The reason why it was called Gravelands was because all the songs that they picked were for people that were dead. So there was an irony of all these different things. This guy became so big in America, it was unbelievable. Because nobody had ever heard such a good... you know what the Americans are like for Elvis Presley impersonations to begin with. But he was so good that they were just floored by him. The trouble was, this guy was Irish Catholic, had 7 children, and lived in a flat above an off-licence in Belfast. Now, EMI came along and went, "Here you go, have some money. Have some money and you can do whatever you like." And he was like, "You mean I can buy a house?" He was like, "Yeah, you can buy a house with that money." Okay, that sounds really good. And how big of a house? Can all my children have their own bedroom? Well, maybe not all of them, but, there'll be a lot of bedrooms in there. Really? So 2 of them won't have to sleep on the sofa every night? No, because we're going to give you all this money. Now, what he didn't realize, because he knew nothing about the music industry whatsoever, is that he had to pay that money back. How do you pay that money back? In that time, you had to go out on tour and sell the tickets, etc. This guy was heartbroken. He was so heartbroken that I've had to peel his fingers off a door onto an aircraft because he didn't want to go and he wouldn't sit down in his seat. He just loved his family and missed his family so much that the fact of leaving them for anything more than one night, let alone a month in Europe, broke his heart. So we made it so his family could come out every so often and see them. And we arranged certain things for him so that he wouldn't be lonesome all the time. His uncle used to come out for Sunday gigs and all this type of thing. And he fulfilled he kept his money, he fulfilled his contract, and then he left and he went back to being a postman. And he actually drives a cab now in Belfast because he hated the music industry. But that's what a crisis manager did, was something that took over from that. I've had other times where I've had to deal with people that have taken drugs and then gone too far with them and not realized. So you've got that. You've got people that drink too much because everything was free in their dressing room. So suddenly one shot of tequila every night was no good enough. It was not good enough anymore. So there was one bottle of tequila every night before going on stage. But then it became one bottle of tequila every day. And then it became 2 bottles of tequila, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So it's all those kind of things, but only those you can actually deal with once you've got a realistic view of what's happening around you and how, in my case, like I said, how Motorhead had dealt with things like that in the past. One of the bands I did work for actually employed me, just the fact that was on my resume, was that if she can spend 10 years with that band, she can spend 10 months with us. That's not, she can work that, she can do that. So that was great. And one of the things I always used to say to new bands were, don't even think about it. Please don't think about throwing a TV out the window. Please don't think about doing this, doing that, because I've seen it. I've seen it being done. And trust me, it's been done by the best. And you're not even going to come close. Because some of the things that they'd got up to, one guy who actually was quite drunk, they decided to move his bedroom in the hotel into the place where all the lifts were. So they moved him in his bed. They moved the chairs and things that were around the hotel room. They moved the TV. They moved everything. It was just like he'd wake up, look at the alarm clock on the side, turn over and go back to sleep. Trouble was he was in the lobby outside the lifts. So there's all these sorts of things that went on. The worst thing they ever did was actually, again back in Sweden, was they got, everybody knows what riders are, don't you? Everybody knows what that is, yeah? Nothing that, okay. So on the rider was cheese. Lemmy loved cheese. One of the things that I always picture of him was standing in the back. I got up one morning and he stood at the back of the tour bus in his T-shirt, his Y-fronts, and his cowboy boots, and he's making cheese and crackers because that's what he was having for breakfast. Okay, so cheese was always on. It always is usually on a lot of bands' riders for some reason. But anyhow, they got fed up with the cheese that they were being given. They kept being given cream cheese, and Lemmy hated cream cheese. And so they took the promoter during the day, the sound check, and they handcuffed him to a flight case. After they'd handcuffed him to the flight case, they decided to strip him. So, this is all joking around to begin with, the guy thought. Then they decided to smother him with the cream cheese that they were sick to death of carrying around. So they covered him in cream cheese. Now, if any of you have ever seen a set of Motorhead from those days, they had this amazing aeroplane in the background, and it's called the Bomber, and he used to swoop down on things. They tied him to the Bomber. So the poor, well, that's tied. He sat inside the front bar with no clothes on, with cream cheese on, covered in. This was in front of his hometown. So everybody he knew was in the audience, and he'd invited all these people, and they didn't let him out till after the encore. So the poor guy sued them the next day, and we got into so much trouble. So much trouble. We got out of it. It's amazing, you know what? They say that the good lawyers are expensive, but sometimes they're well worth it too. We got out of it by doing some more free gigs for nothing. And then he never came to them, obviously. He never showed his face again, and they never used that promoter in Sweden again after that. But it's those little things that taught me everything I know. Now, another thing to work, it's like you're probably not realizing just when you're out and about. How many of you going on holiday this year? Okay, you flying? Yeah? Take note of your airport. You know, right, you can get on your phone. Have you ever tried to get on your phone while 5 people are talking to you? And there's like immense of all these people, and they're shouting things at you, and you still got to be on your phone, and you're still trying to look where you're going to go. There's nothing more impressive than just going to where you're going to go. There's nothing more impressive than getting on a British Airways flight from London, and they're going, "Oh, hi, Kim. It's nice to see you Fridays, or do you want your usual to drink and what you want?" That's how well BA knew me on the shuttle flight from London to Preston on a Friday evening. And that all came from just the tour managing side, because of who I'd... British Airways also knew me because did I ever make mistakes? Yeah, I did. Did I admit to them? No, hell no. I never admitted to any mistakes, because I never look at mistakes as being a mistake. I look at them as a learning opportunity. That's my spin on it. It's a learning opportunity to go, I'll never do that one again. And that was when the promoter in Portugal had not actually put AM or PM on a time. So I just took it for granted. It's at night, you know, it's like, and that was through talking to the promoter during the daytime. It's like, you know, you can have a line in the morning, etc. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. The trouble is that this particular band had a horn section with them, and they were doing somebody else on TV that night, so had to be back in London before we were supposed to be. Now, when I find this out, it's 5 a.m. in the morning, and the next flight's at 7:30 out, and it's the only flight out of there that day to get us back. So I actually phoned British Airways up and just said, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need 17 seats on your next flight at this time, leaving, you know, to get us back to London. And they were just like, well, yeah, but you do know it's the height of the holiday season. But you know, when you've got a big band behind you, and like I said, you've got money behind you, it's amazing what you can pull. And we got on that flight. Now, there's other flights but again, it was just because of what I'd done before and who I'd taken to BA. You know, it's like the most amount of money. You won't even remember this because none of you have any cash on you whatsoever. But in the olden days, bands used to get paid in cash. So you had to go into the promoter's office, and if you were being paid $35,000 for that night, you'd sit there and you'd count £35,000 out in cash or whatever currency it was. The most amount of money I've ever carried on me was $750,000. I mean, it was in dollars, so it wasn't as big. But $750,000 in cash is a lot, trust me. And even if you count it out and you think you count it out into thousands, etc., it can cover a suite in a hotel room on the floor. Where do you put it? You know, like American tour managers always used to make me laugh because they'd all swan around in their coats. They always had coats on over their shoulders. It'd be like 90 degrees and they still have their coats on. They had suits on and ties on. And they carried these briefcases called Halliburtons that are like metal briefcases. That's where they used to put their money. Then they used to handcuff them to their wrist. And I'm thinking, why would I ever do that? If somebody wants the money, they're just going to chop my hand off and take it if they're that desperate, because I'm carrying a lot of money. So there are hardly any photographs of me when I was tour managing in America because I didn't want anybody to know who I was. You wouldn't, because you get a target on your back straight away. And so I strapped it to myself. I put it in plastic bags and envelopes, and I got the gaffer tape. I was like a size 8 then. It was a long time ago. So I strapped it to my legs all the way down, all these packets. I looked like I could hardly walk, and underneath my shirt and everything, it was just strapped to my whole body. But it was the only way I could think of carrying all this cash around with me. The good thing I always used to think was, at least I'm in Las Vegas, and the guy next door to my hotel room has either lost a lot of money that night or made 5 times as much as I've got on me anyway. You know, so it was always, and he never looked at it as money. It was not money. It was not real. And somebody was used to say, why didn't you just take off to Brazil? And I'm like, with 3/4 of a minute, it wouldn't have lasted that long. So, so that's one of the other things that have changed now, because, of course, it's just you press a button and you know if you've been paid or not. So, okay, now I've been rambling, and I know you guys get... So, come on, I need some questions now. Give me some obscure questions. To give you an example, I once did a talk at Lipper, and we started on countries. And they threw a town or a country or a city at me, and I had a story for that city. So has anybody got any questions basically on your own careers or whatever you want to ask? Because now's your, join me. So anybody at all? Yeah. Okay, it's kind of like being pregnant. And the reason why I say that is, if you remember the bad times, you'd never do it again. Because the bad times can be so bad that you just erase them. And the good times make up for everything else. And everything happens so quickly. It just happens so quickly that every day's different. And you never know what's going to happen the next day. So, as for the worst time, I'm going to just let drugs in for 1 second here. Basically, we were in a transit van, and we were late to a gig in Cardiff, and we're going over the M4, and basically we're on the toll bridge, and we'd paid the toll bridge money, and we're going hell for leather, and it was pouring down. And the police decided to stop us for going too fast. Now, we had a joint in the front. So I was given the joint to throw out the window. I wound down the window to let go of the joint, but it flew back in. Now, we had a load of programs in the back and T-shirts, and we pulled over, and the girl that was driving, she wound down the window, and she was like batting her eyelashes and everything at this police officer. And he's going, can I smell burning in the back of your van? No, officer, I don't know why. And there are flames coming from this box of paper, because that's where the joint has ended up. So we tried to tell him it was a cigarette, and he helped us actually distinguish the joint, and we threw that over, wherever, I don't know, I can't even remember. Thank God it was raining that night, because he really didn't have that much. He didn't have the opportunity to really search it or look for it. So that was a bad move. Yeah. Anything else? Just throw them at me. Okay. Manchester Apollo. Funniest. Well, I don't know if this... Okay, the funniest one from... See, I had a really bad experience in Manchester. And I was actually turned over by somebody that worked at Manchester Apollo. Because I was on my way home, basically. The gig had finished, I was on my way home. And I had a hire van. And basically, you know when you get in a car, and I don't know if you drive. Who drives? The ones of you don't, learn. And I'm saying that because if you are in the music industry, one of the things that is kind of crucial in a way is you never know if you're ever going to be asked to drive something or do something. So having that behind you actually gives you a leg up of doing other things to get your foot in the door. You know, just to be a driver for somebody helps. So that is one thing. We never employed anybody that couldn't drive because of that. Okay, so I'm driving back home, and it feels weird. You know, I was pressing on the accelerator, and again, it was raining. All these stories come from when it's raining. Anyhow, so it was not performing as it should have done. And I'm coming out up to the exit of where I got off, and it starts getting really sluggish. So I get to the top of the ramp, and I just pull to one side, and basically it just wouldn't turn over. I had petrol in. It's okay. I had petrol in and everything, so I knew it wasn't that. Anyway, I got out the car, and I thought, oh, God, I can't walk along with all this money. I'm going to stash it. And I stashed it underneath the seat. Now, it's a long, long time ago, and this will tell you how long ago it was, because I think these are even collector's items now. But I had 2 Sony Walkmans in that car. Now, these Sony Walkmans weren't even available in this country at that point. They've been brought back from Japan. So there was 2 Sony Walkmans on the dashboard. There was a very expensive camera on the dashboard. And I needed some change for, no mobile phones, of course, needed some change for a phone box. Got this bag of change and stuff that I had left, that was on the car seat. But I stashed the real money underneath the car seat and then covered it with all kinds of stuff. So only I would know it was there. Went off to the phone box that I could see in the distance, and this car pulled up, and it just went, are you okay? And I was like, no, a car's broken down, looking for a phone box. And this guy went, well, that one's no good. I've just tried to use it. There is one down the road, though. And it was literally pouring, and I did the worst thing I could ever imagine. And because he said, I can drive you there. So I was like, okay, jumped in the car, and he drove me to the phone box. That wasn't the worst thing that happened. So basically, I do the phone call, and then he's back again where he dropped me off, and he went, I've just been to fill up with petrol. I'll drive you back to your van. So he did, but he didn't drive me all the way back to the van. He parked quite at the end of the road where we were, and he said, I've got to go. I'll drop you off here if that's okay. So I walked back, and I unlocked the door, and I was like, what the hell's all this stuff on the seat? Started to brush it off and realized it was glass. My heart sank. So basically, I looked where I'd left the money, and it had gone. The good thing about it all was that this had happened. This was the 3rd time it had happened from people from Manchester. The guy obviously no longer works there, and he was fired when they found out who it was. But basically, they'd put sugar in my petrol tank, and it had wrecked and it just completely ground to a halt. But I was the 3rd one out of a bunch of, and one guy had been beaten up because he didn't leave his vehicle because he knew another vehicle was following him. So he waited, but he got beaten up and he was found in a hedge. And on another instance, when there was 2 guys in the van, one guy stayed in the van, another guy went to the phone box, and the guy that stayed in the van got beaten up. So on one side, I was not beaten up in any way. All they did was take the money.
But try and explain that to the police, that you're not quite sure if it's, but you know the money was over 8,000, but you're not quite sure if it was more near a 12 or 10, or could have been between that. And I know, I'll just phone the band up and just check to tell them where I am and that I'm in the police station. And you phone the band member up, and the first thing the band member says down the phone is like, "Oh my God, Kim, are you in the police station?" Yeah. What did they find on you? Right, so that is the worst thing, that, because it's like, why would you say that? So the next thing, there's a woman comes in, and now that I've got to take everything off and do all that, and yeah. So that was my worst experience in Manchester, and I think that kind of takes over from it. But I mean, another thing, it's like, how many people are local to here, live around here? How many people are away from here? Okay, so a lot of people say, like, how did you manage to do what you did when you don't even live near London or anything? It's like, the music scene's not like that. You know, it's not like that. It's like, yes, Hammersmith, I did more gigs at Hammersmith Odeon than I did at Manchester Apollo, but again, you know, it doesn't matter. Your office changes every single day, which is amazing. You never get bored until you get to the same place about 5 times. And then you suddenly realize, I've been here before, I know where everything is. You know, you don't get to sightsee. That's another thing, unless you make time for yourself, which I did in the end. We were in San Francisco, and I said to the bus driver, I can't wait to get to San Fran. I really want to see the bridge. I want to see the Wiggly Road. I want to see all those places. And he turned around to me and went, Kim, you were there 2 days ago. I'm like, how did I not know? And the reason being is, you drive into these amazing stadiums in a bus with blacked out windows. It's dark inside the stadium. It's full of concrete. There are no windows. Then at night, after the gig's finished, you get back on that bus and you drive away. So I always used to give myself half an hour. I used to book a cab, take the cab, and I just say to them, take me around the city, show me everything you can, but I need to be back here in half an hour. And that was the only time I actually got to see places. But it was an exciting way. And my daughter hated it when she was growing up, because we used to go on holiday, and I'd go, we're going to such a place for the weekend, when most people would go for like the week. And we go sightseeing and do it all in half an hour, because that's what I was used to, you know. So yeah, it's exciting stuff. Don't me to say that guy, yeah. Yeah. It was, right, okay, I'll tell you, it was great. They were amazing. The only thing I never did was tell Neil, what's Neil's surname if you're into... There we go. We couldn't think of it earlier, could we, Lee? So, yeah, there we go. Anyway, I was once sat on the tour bus with him, and he said, what kind of music are you into? And I knew if I'd said funk and disco, he would have hit me over the head. So I never told him. Great fun, because I'll give you a story in this one. We'd done Pink Pop, and there was all these different bands there, and we're all staying in the same hotel. This was another learning experience for me, getting to the end point of my, you know, like what taught me everything that I knew. I was 20, and in the bar, you had to be 21. It was a cocktail bar. There was another member, he was called Skip, was one of their roadies, and he was also my age. So neither of us could go in, but I tried it. I walked in, and I felt really confident, walked up to the bar, ordered a drink, and imagine all these different bands were in this bar, and the police were sat down the side on these 3 chairs, and they said, don't serve her, she's far too young. I was far too young. So it was like, thank you so much. Now I've got to leave. Because, of course, I couldn't show my passport. It wouldn't have worked. Nothing. They were very apologetic. But Geddy found out that Skip and I couldn't go. And it was like the end of tour party, the end of Pink Pop party. It was everything. So they actually hired a room opposite the bar and put a private bar in there so that we could all go in. And it didn't matter what age we were. So that was fun. We got so drunk so incredibly drunk that I ended up outside my hotel room. I got the key in the door, and I was woken up by the maid vacuuming around me in the morning. Geddy was still in the lift. He was fast asleep in the corner, and the lift was just going up and down. So, yeah, great fun. But they really, really took care of me. So it was great. It was great fun, yeah. Yeah, loads of times. Any of you that are thinking of becoming artist liaisons, then email me saying, I want to become a tour manager. Please don't. You have no idea whatsoever. Great opportunity to work with bands and get to know them, but it's not the way to get a tour manager's job at all. Because you have no idea. A festival is the pain in my neck. I hated them. And the reason why, I didn't hate them, but there's so many things going on. Micro scooters came along and they were a godsend. We all had them because it was getting from your tour bus to to wherever without having to wait for somebody in a golfing cart come and pick you up. And younger people that would be in artist liaisons, being a pain in the neck, keep knocking on the door going, you okay? Do you need any more of this? Do you need this? I'm going to bring you this. It's like, go away. And you had to be so nice to them because they didn't know any different, that they don't want to, nobody wants to talk, you can't get in here. I once saw Blondie throw a poor guy out of their trailer type thing because he was just sat on the steps. Well, she kicked him down, actually. He was sat on the steps. He was the artist liaison officer, and he was just sat there in his own world trying to go, like, anything you need, anything you want, I'm here for you. And she was like, we can't even have a conversation in here, in the this Winnebago thing without you listening to it all. And please just go. So I've had so much experience at festivals. And the reason why I say I don't like them is that as a tour manager, you've still got work to do. You've still got forms to fill out. You've still got advancing to do. You've still got phone calls to make, all kinds of stuff, emails to do, everything. And having all the noise from the other stages, etc., is really hard. So that's when you learn that you block music out. You listen for certain things because that gives you a key. If it's your own band on stage, right, I need to be here now. I need to have done that by now. They're coming off stage in 2 minutes for a drink, then they're going back on. You need to make sure that that's all in position and everything's running smoothly. So there are little tweaks, but the rest of it you cut out. So, yeah, experience the festivals. What else about festivals? Oh, the worst was, this was with a band that was, it was with Chumbawamba, actually, and they were playing in America, and they just brought this new rule in about how much people could lift on airlines. And we had one piece of flight case, actually, that was filled with cables, etc. It was too heavy, and they wouldn't lift it. So we were told that we had to put it into two cases, split it up. But we were only told this once we got on the plane. Now, there was no way that we could have split the two pieces and the flight made its departure time. So I sent everybody ahead, and there was just me and one of the road crew went to sort this out. Sorted it out, but now we had to fly to where this festival was. We actually drew the good straw here because we could go now to an airport which was actually closer. But then we had to hire a car and drive to the venue. It was a massive festival in Milwaukee, and there was about 15 stages. Now, we've got police escort in, and we're following these police escort, but I hear, many of you might not have heard it, it was a song called I Get Knocked Down. And basically that was playing, and it was live. And I suddenly went, what the hell? They're on stage already. I stopped the car, jumped out the car, all these police and everybody stopped. I ran onto the stage, ran up the stairs at the back, onto the stage to find out it was a tribute band. Now, things like those kind of things. So then you could have like, really sorry. But it was just it was crazy. But like I said, we had to, that's the thing about tour managers, you've got to think on your feet. Anything can happen, any situation can happen, and you've got to resolve it. You can never go to bed thinking, oh, never mind, I'll think about that in the morning. You can't do that. You can't even wake up in the morning and think, oh, I've got a really sore head. Do you know what? I'll turn over, I'll just get another hour. I'll phone in sick. I won't go in till tomorrow. You can't do that either. You can be so ill and you've got to keep going. The only thing you can do is get a doctor to give you a B12 shot, a vitamin shot, to keep you, something to uplift you or something like that, unless you're in Switzerland and they cost £12,000. So, there's all that to think of in touring life. You have to think about clothes, washing clothes, cleaning clothes, sleeping, who snores, who doesn't snore, who you need to be next to. A couple of tips that I've put, I would say, is 2 things. I always used to spray. You've got Febreze now. There was no Febreze sometimes in those days. But I used to spray the curtain with perfume. And the reason being is women or girls should always sleep on the bottom bunk. And it's because you're not climbing above anybody. You don't have to climb above anybody. There's no curtains opening at eye level. There's none of that going on. You're underneath, you're on the bottom, nobody can see you. The downside to that is that's where everybody puts their shoes. So it stinks, or it can do. But if you spray the curtain with perfume, it's just wafting in the breeze. And it's so much nicer than somebody's sweaty, smelly feet. So that's one thing. I always just put 2 carrier bags are another good thing. I always carried 2 carrier bags with me on a tour bus. One in case you're sick and you can't make it, you're not supposed to be sick in the toilet. You have to clean that up for the bus driver the next day anyway. So, but if you've got a carrier bag with you, it can be travel sickness. It can be having too much to drink. It can be something you've eaten, something that you've eaten in a strange place. So if you're sick, that's fine. That's dealt with. Another is to put your shoes in. If they're really muddy and dirty or whatever, put your shoes in. But I always had 2 carrier bags tucked down the side of the bunk, always just in case. So that's one tip. And another tip that I know so many people have used after I said this was when you walk into a hotel room, I have a routine. So I go into the hotel room, open the door as wide as it will go, and then I put my heaviest bags by that door, so the door is open. Then I go to the back, and I work myself back, and I check under the bed, and I check in various places, and I make sure nobody's in there. Then once I know that nobody's in there, then I'll shut the door and lock it. I always put the do not disturb sign on the door, so nobody's going to come in. But everybody also knows that's connected with the tour that if anybody wants me, just ignore the do not disturb sign. It doesn't make any sense. A couple of other tips that I got. When I first went to America, I remember getting a phone call, and they said, "What kind of piece do you want to carry?" And I was like, "Piece of what?" And they're just like, do you usually use a Magnum? And I'm like, holy crap, no. I don't want a gun. What do you mean? Do I need a gun? And like, no, they just carry them. I'm like, well, I don't want one. So like, okay, it's up to you. If you don't want, you don't want one. And then I'm thinking about it, and I was traveling on the Tuesday. I was going to America. This was Saturday night. I think, what am I going to do? If it's that violent, what the hell am I going to do? So I thought, I'll go and take some martial art somewhere tomorrow. I'll go and take a crash course in something that's going to teach me how to defend myself. So you can imagine the guy's face when I turn up and I go, I've got an hour. Teach me how to floor somebody or do this to them in an hour. And and I've got no more other time to talk to you. So he did. He thought it hilarious that I could actually think I could learn his sport in such a short time, that he'd been doing it for years just to get as good as he was. But he gave me a couple of tips which I've used and have worked. And he said, right, instead of your Magnum, take with you an extra large T-shirt. Also take an extra large pair of boxer shorts. I'm like, really? What the hell am I going to do with those? And some socks. He said, then as you go into the door, throw them on the floor, up to the bed. Because most crimes are committed in hotels by people that are actually in the hotels. They know who you are, which room you're in, and what you do. Because it's on your list that, you always have like a list of every room that everybody's in that comes onto your phone now. But, so's the hotel in case they need anything. And so they know which room number you're in. They've got keys or a way of getting into your room. But if they walk into your room and they suddenly see an extra, they think, oh, it's a woman here, so I've got no problem, of grabbing the money and doing a runner or whatever. They see a pair of socks. They see an extra large T-shirt. And they see a pair of boxer shorts and they think, who the hell did she sneak in? He's huge. And it actually is one of the best things I've ever done, because it helped once in a Holiday Inn in America when somebody actually tried to come in. And then they were like, whoa, just ran off down the corridor. So that's worked. And if you don't want to do that, just hang them over the radiator. Because again, those aren't hers. Whose are they? She's obviously got some huge person beside her that's staying in the room with her. So that was another tip. Another tip is remove everything. As soon as you shut the door, then go to, why do they do this? Put all this rubbish on hotel stands, like breakfast is at this time. Here's a sign to put outside to say you want a maid in there. Here's another sign that's saying pizza delivered from such a place. And you've got all this information of the area, but the trouble is you're not there long enough to even appreciate any of that. So throw it all in the drawer. Get rid of any bits that are movable in your hotel room. The pad and pen next to a phone, put it in the drawer. Just eliminate it all, so that when you've got like 500 receipts from various things on top of a counter, and you've got paperwork saying where you're going, you've got contracts on there, you never leave anything behind. Because you double check your room to make sure you've got everything, and then before you shut that door and you no longer can get back in, you know that you haven't left anything behind, because you can look at the top of the counter and there's nothing on there. You can look somewhere else and everything's clean. So you can just walk out the door and you've left nothing behind. So those are, some of my tips I would give for that. Some more questions, please. Yeah. The worst artist was a hippie, actually. They were awful. It was a guy called Alan Davey, who is a bass player for a band called Hawkwind. Now, you'd think that being a hippie, he'd be dead laid back, dead everything. He was one of the rudest, nastiest people I've ever met while he was on tour. He was obnoxious to his crew. He thought he was above everybody else. Get me this, get me that. Oh, get him fired. And it actually became quite vindictive with a person who I thought he didn't deserve this, and it was a sound engineer. They didn't get on from day one. And basically, he was out to get him, and in the nastiest way possible. So he let him do the sound engineering for the gig. We were in the middle of nowhere. And then he decided he wanted him fired. He wanted him gone that night. And he expected me to throw his stuff off the tour bus and leave him. Just leave him. No money, no anything. But I did get him a cab to get him to a hotel that was paid for right next to the airport. But I just thought the way he went about it was so nasty. Now, that was in his younger days. Now he's older and lives in LA, and I wrote a book a couple of years ago. And he was the first person to actually get in touch and say to me, Kim, I'm really pleased you did this. It's amazing. I'm really glad you did it. Even though I slagged him to bits in the book, he's still actually, yeah. So people change. So you can never judge them by who they are. There was, or what they appear to be on that tour. Because like everybody, people change. Now I've come through it all, I would say there are 3 types of people on tour. In the beginning, you are so excited to be there. You do anything for anybody, you put yourself out there, and yeah, this is great fun, and I'm loving every minute. Then you become the cockiest, nastiest person there is, because it goes to your head. And please don't tell me it won't, because it will. Because suddenly, hey, do you know how many times I've flown to Los Angeles in this last month? Hey, do you know how many times I've been in this venue and I've played at the Hollywood Bowl, or I've done this or I've done that? And you suddenly become cocky. And you think the whole world knows who you are. And I've just been to a restaurant and I couldn't get a table. Well, perhaps it's because you didn't book one. Well, don't they know who I am? Well, maybe they did, but maybe they just don't like you. So you've got that stage. That lasts the longest, unfortunately. Then you come out the other end and you think, what an arsehole I've been. What a nasty person I've been. Because realistically, the one thing I did find when I actually made made it to being a recognized female tour manager. Now, let us say I was one of the first 6 in the world. Now, out of that 6, 4 were American, and 2 didn't even exist. They're actually the managers making up names and taking their girlfriends on tour with them and getting paid double. So that's how many women there were doing that job. So once, you've got to that stage and you've come out and you think, I can get so much more done if I'm just nice to people. And that's when I'm sorry, everybody that's in the music industry goes through those 3 stages. And you ask anybody that's been in it for as long as I had. I mean, I was touring up until 2013 from 1979. So, yeah, it's a long time. And that's all I did. I never wanted to work in an office. I never wanted to do anything else. I just wanted to tour. So that gives you some idea of how long you can be a nasty pain in the arse to when you can become a nice person and actually try and help things. And realize, like I say, as a female, you can get far much more done if you're just nice to people. I used to love it. You've heard of Madison Square Garden? Madison Square Garden is well known for its union. In New York, you've heard about unions, yeah? That they are, oh God, they're hard work. Because basically, they won't let you do anything. And you've got these really heavy-duty New York accents going on, and they're big, big guys. But you sit on a flight case, not dressed up as like an American tour manager, like I said, with their coats on and their Halliburtons with the handcuffs. And you sit on this flight case, and they start talking, and they're like, hey, I can't even do a New York accent, so I'm not going to try. But they go like, have you heard this? These guys have got a woman as a tour manager. No. Well, this is going to be fun. And they're like, and I'm listening, it's like, yeah, we can have, lunches on me today and tomorrow, guys, if we can pull one off. We'll just tell her we've worked so many more minutes than we should have done. And we'll just tell her this, and we'll just tell her that. But I'm sat there and I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, really? Okay. And I did nothing. I didn't storm in there going, Hey, and I'm the woman tour manager. I waited till the very end. Then when we came to do the settlement, you sat in this, like say, these offices, and the promoter's there, and he's counting out, and he's like, right, okay, so we've deducted so much because the union had to work overtime on that. And I'm like, he doesn't recognize me, does he? To the guy, the union boss that was in the room, and he looked at me and he went, oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm the girl that was sat on the flight case earlier. And I listened to everything you said. Wasn't it right? You're going to buy them lunch today and tomorrow? Well, I'm in town still tomorrow, so can I come for lunch too? And his face, this big, big dude with this New York accent, just went the brightest red I've ever seen in my life. And it was wonderful. It was so good. So entertaining. So yeah. Anybody else? Okay. No? Okay, go on. 3 times. 3 times. Out of all those years, or just 3 times. And it was all to do with food. Once was because, this is when I was actually selling T-shirts, I did this. Everybody kept forgetting about me. I'm out in the foyer selling T-shirts. Everybody else has had dinner and everything else, and everybody's forgotten about me. We're now like, I'm starving, I'm hungry, and I want something to eat. So I was so angry before I had to go and set up the merchandising stand that I wasn't going to get to eat again that night because I was miles away from everybody else. That I went into the dining room area where they'd set up. There were 6 trestle tables. Double trestle tables length. And they were all, if you've got caterers, like they really go to town with, you have 3-course dinners every night and that kind of thing and all that going on, and silver service. So you've got, so all the cutlery's out, the plate, everything. And I just went through every table and she's like, forget about me, you'll not forget about me next time. And I turned over every table. And so that was one of the worst times I got angry because I was just like, no. Not again. They didn't forget me the next time. And everybody else had to eat off their knees that night because I'd done that. And I just smashed the whole place up. That was really bad. The second time was, where was this? Oh, okay, Eastern Europe. And I've been a vegetarian for... Actually, this comes back. Here's a story. Again, to one of the worst times ever was in Spain. And we had gone to San Sebastian. We were the first band to actually play in San Sebastian. This was with Motorhead. And they decided, different countries have different cultures, but they decided to kill a calf in front of its mother and in front of me to feed us that night. And I had hysterics and I became a vegetarian that day and never ate meat since. So that was one of the worst experiences. That was horrible. Now, let me go back to the other story that was about food. So we were in Eastern Europe, and it was, again, the first time Motorhead had gone to this particular place in Eastern Europe. And food-wise, so I go down to get food, and I went, I'm vegetarian, and they had this huge thing of chili. So they dipped the spoon in, then they picked out the meat, and they poured it onto a plate with some rice. And I went, I can't eat that. It's like, well, why not? Because it's cooked with the meat. The gravy's now, like for any of you that are vegetarians, that you can't eat that. But trying to make them understand that. And then the promoter said, well, there's nowhere, you can't get anything to eat. There's no other restaurants. Luckily, one of the guys that was on the crew lived in Italy, and he always had a case of Heinz baked beans on the tour bus to take back to Italy. So I had a tin of beans that night instead, so I was okay. But I lost it that time, because the next day I found out from the promoter. Actually, I've just thought 4 times I've lost it. Was that there was actually an Italian restaurant just up the road from where we were. It's quite sad, actually, this. Not more angry, but I was angry. And he didn't take us there because normally the only people that ate there were people that were like multimillionaires and things, because of the difference that anybody that lived in that area couldn't afford to eat there. And that was the reason why he hadn't taken us. And then I found out that just a margarita pizza would have cost us like $10. You know, so yeah, I was furious at him. So I shouted and screamed. And let me see what another one. Oh God, I'm just thinking of any maybe other times that I've lost it, but there's only 3 to 4 that are noticeable. I've never lost it with a band member, because I've always remembered that at the end of the day, you know, they're the ones that are paying you your outrageous wage. They're the ones that are paying you the money to work for them. So it's best to do it calmly rather than shouting and screaming at somebody, you know, which you just didn't do. And you always pretended that, yeah, you know, the band would say something that they wanted immediately or something done, and you just agree. And then walk away and call them all the names under the sun under your breath where they couldn't hear you. Or go into the toilet and scream, you know, and they didn't know that you thought the worst of them for saying something or something like that. Yeah, but, okay. Anything else? Yeah. Oh, okay. Right, the Madonna story was at a charity event in Los Angeles. And basically, I was with a band called Concrete Blonde, and they were playing in this charity event. And Jeanette Napolitano was a diva, is a diva. She knows she's a diva, so I can say that. A lot of, yeah, I won't even go. Anyway, she is, but she knows it. But one of the things, and I completely agree with this, is during a sound check, it's not for people to come and have a listen. Sound check is there for the band to make mistakes, to try new things that they wouldn't do in front of a live audience. So if you are doing a sound check, everything had to be emptied. The only person that was allowed in that venue would be the people that were working there. And even down to the people, if they were working behind the bar, had to leave while the sound check was going on. So nobody was allowed in that. And basically, it was our time to do a sound check. So I went to check to make sure the monitor guy was where he was supposed to be. Front of house was there, you know, shouting, everything was ready. And there was this lady by the side of the monitor desk. Now, when you see Madonna, you picture in different things, you know, like you don't see her as normal person. I'm going to say like so, but this person had on a pair of trainers, a pair of jeans, and a lilac T-shirt. I said before, don't even ask me why I remember she had a lilac T-shirt on, but she did. Bog standard. Her hair was down, flat, and with 2 hair grips at either side, centre part in 2 hair grips. No makeup whatsoever. And she was just leaning against the desk at the side. So I thought, oh God, who are you? You shouldn't be there. So I did not know who she was. And I'm walking across the stage towards the monitor desk, and the monitor guy is going, stop, because he knows exactly what I'm about to do. I'm going to ask her to leave. And he's going, no. But I just went up to her and I was thinking, look, please don't say that, because if she's your girlfriend, she shouldn't even be, you know better than her being in here anyway. And I just went up to her and I just said, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We've got nobody, you know, on stage to watch the sound check. It's completely empty. And so if you wouldn't mind leaving. So she just upped and left. then after she'd gone, the monitor guy said to me, "You do know who that was, don't you?" And I was like, "I have no idea who was it." Thinking he was going to say, "Oh, that was the wife of the promoter," or something like that. And he went, "That was Madonna." I'm like, "Oh, crap." That's awful. I've just thrown it. He said, "Yeah, you've just thrown Madonna off the stage." I was like, "Okay." Then life just went on, because that's over with now. It's gone. Nothing I can do about it. She did send me a note afterwards that said she's sorry she disturbed the sound check, and not to worry about the fact that what I'd done, because if the shoe had been on the other foot, they would have done it. She would have gone mad at her tour manager if she'd have let somebody not knowing who they were stand at the side of the stage. So I was okay, but yeah, I did throw Madonna off the stage. Anybody else? I don't know how long I've been talking for. Oh God. Wow. Okay. Anything else? Any Q&As before we finish? Come on, it's your time to ask anything of like touring wise. So I mean, just go for it if you can think of anything that we've not kind of covered. No? Okay. Yeah. Right. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. It's been really interesting. Everybody, Kim's got a book as well, so if you want to have a look at that online, it might be worth a read. Yeah, I think she's got a couple of copies on her anyway. But yeah, it might be worth a read in case she hasn't covered everything.